Welcome back in. Today we're discussing our Week 14 top defense and kicker options of the week. Let's go ahead and get to it. This is our last week with any sort of bye weeks. We have the Patriots, Giants, Panthers, and 49ers all on bye this week. This is what everybody wanted right before the fantasy playoffs, but let's go ahead and get to it. We're going to start with our top defense of the week, and that is going to be the Denver Broncos. Heading into week 14, they get a matchup against the Raiders. While the Broncos have been a truly elite fantasy defense like they were in 2024, they still easily lead the league in sacks with 51. One area that has hurt their output has been creating turnovers. They currently rank 28th in offensive drives ending in a turnover, and overall, they have only created a total of 10 turnovers this season, which ranks fifth worst. Next up for the Broncos, a road matchup against the Raiders offense that yields the third most fantasy points to opposing defenses. With how bad this Raiders offensive line is, we should see that turnover number tick up a bit this weekend. Let's move over to our top streaming options of the week. We're going to start with the Commanders. The Commanders defense is certainly not a defense we look to utilize. They are currently the DSC 29, averaging 4.2 fantasy points per game. The Commanders have racked up the 18th most sacks, but they have struggled to create turnovers. They rank bottom 3 in turnover rate this season. Only the Giants and Jets are worse. So why play the Commanders? Well, the Vikings offense cures most of this. They currently allow a sack on 10% of dropback, which ranks just behind the Raiders. They have also thrown an INT or on 4.4% of dropbacks, which is easily the worst rate in the league. Overall, the Vikings allow 11.6 fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. The Commanders will be a top 10 defense for me in week 14. Let's move over to the Buccaneers. The Bucs defense is the DST 12 on the season, averaging 6.7 fantasy points per game. The Bucs currently blitz at the fourth highest rate in the league and have turned that into the 14th most sacks. They've also been opportunistic, creating a turnover on 13.3% of offensive drives, which ranks seventh highest. The Bucs now take on a Saints offense that's allowed the fifth most fantasy points to opposing defenses. Let's move over to the Miami Dolphins. For the second week in a row, we are rocking with the Dolphins DST. Last week, they finished the DST 8. They registered 8 sacks, 2 turnovers, and for 9 fantasy points against the Saints. The Dolphins have now scored 9 or more fantasy points in 3 of their last 4 games. While I have more respect for Tyrod Taylor, he also has been sacked 12 times and turned the ball over 4 times over those last 4 games. Overall, the Jets allow the 10th most fantasy points to opposing defenses. Lastly, I want to hit on is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have been significantly better at home than on the road this season. At Arrowhead, they allowed just the 14 points per game compared to on the road, but they've actually allowed 24.7 points per game. CJ Stroud also has a stark difference between his home versus road splits. On the road, Stroud averages 213 passing yards and a lowly 3.4% touchdown rate. Texans have one of the worst offensive lines in the league as well. I'd expect Spags to dip into his bag and bring heavy blitz packages this weekend. Chiefs are a top 12 defense for me this week. Let's keep moving here. Let's move over to kickers. And our first streaming option is going to be Evan McPherson. It's time to put some respect on his name. Evan McPherson has been on a heater since week 7, scoring 8 or more fantasy points in every game, and has 4 top 12 finishes in 4 of 6 games over that span. McPherson is now averaging 9.4 fantasy points per game, good for the kicker 9. Next up for McPherson is a great matchup against the Bills. This game right now has the second highest total on the slate of 51.5 points. And the Bengals have a respectable 24-point implied team total. So I think this is a very good matchup here for Evan McPherson to keep things rolling. Let's keep moving here. Let's move over to Riley Patterson. Patterson has been one of the most reliable fantasy kickers this season. He scored 6 or more fantasy points in every single game, but 2, and has been a top 13 kicker in 9 of 11 games. The only negative with him has been that they've only asked him to kick 1 field goal for 50-plus yards. However, he does lead the league in field goals with 10 from 40-plus yards. He's also been on a bit of a heater lately, averaging 10 fantasy points per game over his last 4. Good for kicker 7 over that span. Next up for Riley Patterson is a great matchup against the Jets, who allow the third most fantasy points to kickers. Move over to Brandon McManus. McManus looks to be back on track after dealing with a quad injury at various times this season, causing him to miss 3 games. His injury was certainly hampering him early in the year because the usually reliable Brandon McManus has converted just 71% of field goals this season, which is well below the league average of 84%. However, since returning in week 12, McManus has put up 20 fantasy points and has produced back-to-back top 12 performances while converting all 4 of his field goals and 6 of his PATs. McManus looks to be a solid top 12 option this week in a matchup where the Packers have the 5th highest applied team total. Let's keep moving. I want to hit on a couple other guys that are just outside of my top 12, but I think are also very viable streaming options. First is going to be Jake Moody. He took over for Matt Gay, who was released a few weeks ago. Moody is now on his 3rd team this season, signing with the Commanders. In his first game action, he converted 2 field goals, both PATs for 10 fantasy points. He has now scored 8 or more fantasy points in 3 of his 4 games this season. Moody and the Commanders will travel to Minnesota to face a defense that allows the second most fantasy points to kickers. And then lastly, the thicker kicker. There's plenty of volatility here as Mevis has only attempted 2 field goals in his 4 games with the Rams. He does, however, have a ridiculous 17 PATs over that span. If the Cardinals can force some stops, we should see Mevis take advantage of the matchup against the Cardinals, who have the 4th most fantasy points to kickers. So that being said, if you have any questions, if you're looking to stream this week, let us know in the comment section below. We'll get you set up. Only one more week till the fantasy playoffs start. Let's get them dubs. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.